is a good idea.
You sit here. So we can get the cameras. Hi, Doc. How are you? You ready?
I'm ready.
You ended with hope. Hope is the thing that runs through you. I've known you long enough to know that hope isn't just something that comes easily all the time. There's much despair out there. How do you manage and maintain that level of hope and optimism, if you would call it that?
Well, I suppose, partly is because, as I said, I lived through World War II. And there was a time in England when it was inevitable that we would be overrun by the might of Nazi Germany. We weren't prepared for war. I was on the south coast, and our protection against the might of the German Navy was a little bit of barbed wire along the coast, some scaffolding, and they blew up the piers. But that was it. So, there were all the old men coming out with pitchforks, and we had Churchill. We had Churchill saying, we will fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them in the lanes, we'll fight them in the cities. And he turns aside to a friend and says, and we'll fight them with the ends of broken bottles, because that's all we bloody well got.
That can be very traumatic for a young child to have to process. Were you aware over time that that instilled some pretty heavy feelings inside you?
Oh, I knew, my sister didn't, she was 4 years younger, but I knew what was going on. I knew bombs were falling in London. I knew that some bombs fell near us. In fact, Mum, my sister, and I were nearly annihilated by a bomb. I had an uncle who was killed in the war, so yes, I knew what was going on. All right.
World War II, Vietnam, we see what's happening in the world today. You referenced some of it. It's hard for people to maintain hope when you look at never again means, oh, it's happening again.
Well, I guess, George, I'm an obstinate kind of creature. And the worse it gets, the more my fighting spirit is roused. I know there's a there's a phrase in the Bible that says, girding your loins, and I'm not quite sure what I gird them with, but I go out girding my loins with something. And I'm not going to be hit down.
Yeah.
And yes, do I get depressed sometimes? Of course I do. Do I look at Al Jazeera and see what's happening in Gaza and not be able to sleep at night? Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. And why on earth the world isn't doing something? Yes, people are talking about the genocide, the same in Africa, but nobody's doing anything.
Right.
And it makes me angry. Mm-hmm. You're angry too.
I'm very angry, of course. There's this moment where you feel like you can't do much, and then you realize you can do things, you can do small things. I think a lot about Bob Marley talking about big trees and small axes, right? And what we can do with small axes. And I think with Roots and Shoots and more, we see you take the smallest of the small and try to let them know that they can actually make change.
Well, what we can do is change things on the ground where we are. What we can do is fight for the environment. Because if we continue to let the environment be destroyed, then when peace comes, as it will, as it did after World War II, as it did after Vietnam, and all the other wars through history, we need to be ready for peace.
We hear an awful lot about being ready for war. We don't hear an awful lot about being ready for the peace that will come. And little kids who are growing up, especially they went through the pandemic, they're living through this, their young brains are so heavily influenced by a lot of very scary things. You've traveled across the world for many, many decades now. What sense do you get when you meet kids today?
Well, it's different in different countries, actually. But, I mean, I get an awful lot of people who've given up. I get people who are angry. I get people who are very bitter I get an awful lot of depression. And it somehow seems to me that my job now is to give people hope, because if we don't have hope, we fall into apathy. We do nothing. And if we want, especially if our young people lose hope, how horrible that we bring young people into the world, into a world where we don't give them hope that there can be a better future.
I met somebody out there today. She's over there. She's almost 9 years old. Her name is Maggie. It's been described to me that you are her Taylor Swift, and pretty good. No shade towards Taylor Swift. There's no shade towards Taylor, but she's almost 9 years old and she wants to be a biologist. And she had asked me to ask you, how long does that take? Oh, by the way, she's with her little chimpanzee called Peanut Butter over there. But so there are kids who still want to do this.
Yes.
Do you know how long it will take for her to become a biologist?
Well, she can be a biologist right now. You don't have to have a degree to learn about nature. You can learn, as I did. I used to have nature notebooks. I drew the little insects and butterflies and birds that I saw, and that makes you a biologist. Later on, maybe you get a degree, but don't let degrees stop you being a biologist now.
There you go, Mag. Did you ever have to navigate being underestimated?
Do I what?
When you were young, we talked about this, even Lewis said, go get that paperwork so you'd be taken seriously. How did you navigate being underestimated when you were young?
Well, I didn't have to, because, we had this very close family. It wasn't only my mother. She had 2 sisters, and there was my grandmother. And so I never felt, that was my world. I didn't care about people outside. To hell with them.
That's one of the things that hasn't changed about you over the years, right? This is what a lot of people don't realize about Jane. I've known Jane a long time, is that she's pretty spicy. And we see the sweet Jane Goodall, but that's a real fighter that sits here. You've always been very single-minded about what you're trying to accomplish, but you've learned much over time. What are the things when you go back and see the animals today, if you were to reflect on all the stuff you learned, what really stays with you?
What would I say to the animals?
What have you learned from them, or lessons from them?
Well, lessons I think that I've learned from animals is loyalty. From the chimps, I've learned the value of support of a mother for her child, because we now look back, we've got 65 years of research. So we can look back and we can see that the chimps who had supportive mothers have done better. The females are better mothers, the males reach a higher rank in the society. And so a supportive mother is very, very important. I've learned, I think, humility. I've learned a lot of humility, because animals in so many ways, so many of them are so much better than us. I think.
We know how you feel about chimps. We also know how you feel about dogs. Human beings are the one animal that has certain abilities that can be both beautiful and horrific.
Yes.
When you look at us versus them, and why there seems to be so much of us thinking we have dominance over them. I know you'd mentioned it, you changed your diet as well, right? How long have you been a vegan now?
Well, I've been vegetarian since the late 1960s.
Right.
And then I learned about dairy farms and laying hens. And I became vegan about, 6 years ago. And the reason that I first became vegetarian, when I went to Africa, I didn't know about factory farms. We didn't have them in UK. And then I read Peter Singer's book, Animal Liberation. And the next time I saw a piece of meat on my plate, I thought, This represents fear, pain, death. I don't want to eat that. So I stopped eating meat. And then when I read about the life of a dairy cow, they have a little calf, and the mother calf, the cow-calf bond is so strong. And the mother is allowed to lick her calf. And the calf is allowed to suckle because that brings the milk down. That makes the bond that should last through at least childhood. But then the baby is dragged away. And I was at a place where I could hear the mother and the calf calling all night to each other. But they take the baby away so the mother will come into estrus again, can be impregnated again, can have another calf. Again, it will be taken away. It is horrible.
One animal is the same as every other animal, in your mind. We're all connected to each other,
Yes.
and we learn at different stages of our lives. What do you know now that you didn't know 20 years ago? Not about the food stuff, but just...
Well, let's go back to the food stuff for a minute.
Okay.
Because, probably...
I love this. I've been a vegan for 15 years, and I know how much it annoys non-vegans, so it's kind of fun.
You and I probably stopped eating meat for ethical reasons, right? But then now we know that because of the billions and billions of animals in these unbelievably cruel conditions around the world, huge areas of land are cleared to grow the grain to feed them. More grain to feed animals than starving people. Lots of water is used to change vegetable to animal protein. They are producing in that digestion, like we all do, but cows particularly, methane gas, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. And so it's one of the worst damages to the environment. They reckon 80% of agricultural land is used by either grazing or growing food to feed all these billions of sad, pathetic animals.
There are lots of climate scientists who say it's too late. We are too late.
Yeah, people say it's too late.
What do you think when you hear that?
Well, when I hear that, I think, well, if it's too late, we may as well all give up and say, eat, drink, and be merry, tomorrow we die.
Right.
And luckily, there are scientists who say we still have a window of time. Right. It's not big. The window of time is if we get together now, we can slow down climate change, loss of biodiversity. We can start alleviating poverty. We can start somehow persuading people to leave their unsustainable lifestyles.
You carry a lot of weight. You carry a lot of weight. You've done this a long time. You travel way more days than you don't. Does it ever feel overwhelming or too much?
I travel?
Just, yeah. You just
everything?
Yeah.
Well, yes, it does. And then I think, why me? And then I think, why, when I come to a place, why are all these people here? And it's this, and also the number of people who write to me after a lecture and say, I had given up, but I promise I'll do my bit. And it's when everybody promises to do their bit that we can make the change we need to change. If we care about our children, do we care about them? Mm-hmm. Do we care about this little 9-year-old?
Yep.
And I do, passionately care about them. You do too.
Of course, yes.
So we can't bring little children into the world where there's no hope.
And it's an act. We have to be active players in the future.
Yes.
You're obviously loved by so many. Who's gone after you publicly? Who attacks you publicly?
What?
Who attacks you?
Oh.
Look at her playing like she doesn't know.
You really want to know the only person who's ever attacked me?
Yep.
It was because in a lecture I talk about one of the problems that we have to overcome is the idea that there can be unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources and growing populations of humans and animals, livestock. That's all I say. However, I was twice attacked on social media, second time accused of wanting genocide by Elon Musk.
He's also the guy that said empathy is dangerous.
Yes.
So we know where he stands. When I started in this business, when many of us became aware of what was happening in the world and climate, we didn't live in a social media world where a handful of tech landlords control access to information, share it, disinformation. The fight we're fighting now is so much bigger, it seems.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that as well?
Yes, definitely, because we're fighting fake news. We're fighting some things we don't really understand. The power of AI is becoming greater and greater and greater and greater, and it's terrifying. It can be used for immense good, but it can be used for horrifying evil. And I say evil, and that's one thing you and I were talking earlier about, that chimps show the beginning of aggression, they show the beginning of warfare because the males fight each other over territory. But only humans are capable of true evil. Chimps show the beginning of it. When they're attacking a member from a neighboring community, they don't treat them like another chimp. They treat them like a prey animal, tearing off limbs, things they would never do in a fight, But chimps are not capable of what I call real evil, which is sitting, planning torture or war to people far away while you're just sitting in your nice, cozy room, planning torture, like the Germans planned the Holocaust,
Right.
like Netanyahu is planning what's going on in Gaza.
Right. There are a lot of people in your position who are afraid to say what you just said.
I know. And I probably get reprimanded by some people in my own organization. But I don't care.
Didn't they say? You never have.
Not really. Yeah. I mean, I'm not confrontational, but sometimes when you see true evil and true, I don't know what to call it quite, but the horror that these people are causing, you can't keep quiet.
And it's happening in so many places around the world.
Yes.
So many places around the world. People relate to you in a lot of different ways. Obviously, Roots and Shoots, as you had talked about, is so important for you. What role does Roots and Shoots play in keeping you hopeful and positive?
Oh, they do. I mean, my goodness, when I go around and I see what they're doing, and they show me what they're doing, and, I see such, and, there's one Roots and Shoots story which I'll share because to me it's so symbolic of what Roots and Shoots is about. And this is the first group in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. There were about 15 little children, 8 to 12. And they decided for their first project, they'd seen a hill, they thought it was nearer than it was, and they found out it used to be a sacred hill filled with forest. But now the trees had mostly gone. So they decided for their project, they wanted to go and plant trees. Well, it was kind of, not really terribly sensible, but their mentor didn't want to disappoint them. So he went to a forester friend, they each had a little sapling. I suppose they all had a spade or something to dig with, and they set off, and it was much further than they thought. He'd had to go, this is the eastern part of DRC where all the minerals are, so there's always a warring faction come in to try and get the minerals, and he had to go to the leader and say, is it okay if we go to this hill? The guy said, well, it's quite ridiculous, but I suppose there's no harm. But you'll have to take soldiers with you. So here are these 15 little children clutching their little saplings, and 4 big Congolese with AK-47 rifles over their shoulder. And it's much further than the kids thought. When they get there, they're tired. And after about 10 minutes, the youngest is a little girl of 8, and she starts to cry. Within a few minutes, one of the soldiers leans his gun against a tree and goes to help her. Within the next 10 minutes, all the soldiers had left their guns, were helping children plant trees for the future.
I've tried to get you to dance around this question a lot over the years. Do you think about your impact on people much?
About my...
Impact on people.
Yes, I find it strange. You know, when it first happened to me, like, you know, people saying, can I have a selfie or something? I tried to hide. I put sunglasses on, I let my hair down. People still seem to recognize me somehow or other. And then I realized, well, if I really want to change people, if I really want to grow Roots and Shoots JGI, I must use this, what you want to call it, notoriety or something. So I started taking little things around with me to give them so that they could join JGI, they could make a donation, they could get their kids involved. And so I've decided quite early on, there are 2 Janes. There's this one. What did you call me? Racy or something?
Spicy.
Well, there's this one, who's just me.
What?
There's this one who's just me.
Just you, yeah.
Just a person.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like everybody else. But then there's that other one that's become an icon.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come, they want to hear the icon. They don't know me. Mm-hmm. They think they do. They see a picture. But they don't actually know me.
Right.
So there's the real me and the icon. I have to work terribly hard to keep up with that icon.
But the real you is pretty close to that icon, isn't it? You don't strike me as the kind of person who pretends much.
No, I don't pretend.
Yeah. So you are the icon.
Yeah, but I didn't want to be an icon. And when people call me a celebrity, I really get upset.
Look at that photo. Look at that iconic photo of you up there with
I can't see it.
your hand on the tree. There's a video, you know, social media means all these clips can circulate around now. I don't know if the chimp was called Wunda. Wunda, where you turn your back and she comes back and hugs you. You're making a noise. What are you saying to her?
Are you about to show this video?
No, but they know. You're saying something. What are you doing?
Well, apparently, according to Bella, at the end of this, we're showing the video.
Well, you have that video. We'll do that at the end.
But only when we're getting to the end.
Okay, so say...
The last 5 minutes.
Okay.
We'll come back to what you said.
We are... Spicy. Okay, well then, we don't have a whole bunch of time. I would love to do this for hours and hours. You've been around animals so much. Anybody who's spent any time with animals senses something really powerful, and there's always going to be an understanding gap between us. How have you experienced how animals love and how they grieve?
Well, they show love the same way as we do in a way. Anybody who's had a dog and treats their dog right, they know what the dog love is. Mm-hmm. And anybody who's had or knows anything about dogs and many other animals too, when the dog's person dies, the grief is palpable. And some dogs just refuse to eat and they die because they can't live without them, their person who they loved. So the love is so real. And it's not just dogs. When you get to know, we had a young 8-year-old chimp, and his mother took him back as a baby because her baby died. And when she died, he was very old, he just stopped eating, and he died within 3 weeks. So the grief of animals is very, very real. And you know, the intelligence, we didn't get to that, did
Intelligence?
we? The intelligence. So,
Let's talk about
you know, I mean, so the reason I have these rats don't have a very good reputation. And the reason is because we leave food out and they get it and then we don't like them. And, you know, they're very smart. And actually, you can all look up 5 amazing rats. Look it up on Google. Not now, but later. And you will be amazed. But he represents the giant forest rat. And they have this amazing sense of smell, like all rats. And they can detect landmines buried deep under the ground after a long civil war. They cleared Mozambique. I've watched them being trained. They're trained in Tanzania. They can also detect the very earliest signs of TB. They're now being trained to go down in the rubble after a bomb or an earthquake and detect humans who are alive. Then they will stand up and ring a little bell. And they're now being trained. There's one rat called Little Jane, and she's one of the ones being trained to climb up the crates and detect endangered species that are being in the illegal trafficking. So, you know, they're amazingly intelligent. And you can look up a popo, it's called, a popo, and you find Little Jane, you can adopt her.
How many of you are going to run home and remove the traps you've set in your house now that you know about Little Jane? Okay, so Little Jane is one. What else have we got here?
Well, we've got, let's do Piglet next.
Piglet first. No, right,
Piglet.
next.
Pigs are as intelligent as dogs. And Piglet is representing a pig called Picasso. Picasso.
Picasso.
Picasso was rescued from becoming pork. She went on to a little sanctuary in South Africa. And the woman who rescued her and started this sanctuary is an artist. She noticed that this little pig was watching her. So one day she put a brush in her mouth, set up an easel. Her paintings are selling for over $5,000.
It's a Picasso.
And exactly. And she loves it. She's so excited as soon as she sees a paintbrush. She's the only thing that was taught. She puts her nose in red paint at the end and makes a snout mark. And then there's...
Okay, so now we have the... All right.
I'm sure some of you have seen my octopus teacher. We now know how intelligent the octopus is. And, you know, my favorite octopus story, you want to know it?
Yes, please.
Well, this was an octopus, I can't remember her name. She lived in an aquarium. Boston, I think it was. And the people were really surprised. They'd come in the morning and everything was as usual, except a fish was gone. So after a bit, they put in a camera. And they found after everybody had gone, it was all very quiet, this octopus would open the lid of her tank and she'd climb out and she'd climb into another tank. She'd catch and eat a fish. She'd then climb out and close the lid, go back to her own tank, close the lid. So
nobody knew?
Yes. I mean, this is a real story of a real octopus.
And it shows just that they are smart and they are living their lives. They're not just here for us. One more.
And then cow. Well, cow fits into the story of, you know, the terrible factory farms,
right.
The dairy industry, the cow whose calf is snatched away from her. And if they're allowed to live their lives normally, they can live to be almost 30. I think it's fortunate that in these farms they seldom live before 8. People say that's terrible, but I think considering the life they have to live, I think it's lucky. But if they're allowed to stay bonded with their calves, that can last through life.
All the little kids who are here today, or people who will be raising kids in some form, know that the children are the future in so many respects. And that is one of the good things about social media, is we're learning more and more about what animals can do. Do you think much about, first of all, may you live to be 10,000?
Thank you, no.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, if you were 10,000, you'd still be flying 200. You'd be everywhere. But do you think much about the life you've led and what will happen maybe when you're not here anymore? Do you think about that much?
About what's going to happen after I've left or what's going to happen to me?
Well, that's your business. What's going to happen to you? It's just what happens after the fact when you transition, when you graduate to that next plane.
Well, you know, somebody asked me, and it was in Canada actually, and never been asked before, what's your next adventure? And I thought, well, if it was like 20 years ago, I'd say, I want to go to Papua New Guinea and climb up those mountains where there's all these new species. That really appealed to me, but I couldn't do that now. And so I thought, and I said, well, dying. And there was a deadly hush and a few titters. And I said, well, when you die, there's either nothing, in which case, fine, it's over, or there's something. And I happen to think there's something because of experiences I've had. And I've read, I think, every book about near-death experiences. I've met people who've had them. And if there is something, I can't think of a more exciting adventure than finding out what it is.
I want to hear about what you've experienced. You believe in this because of things you have experienced.
Yes, my second husband, it's quite a long story which I won't go into, but I was on my own. I was actually in Gombe, and there's absolutely no question in my mind that he, in some form, was there and told me all sorts of wonderful things, but I couldn't remember. And when I tried to remember what he'd said, it was like I was fainting. And then I came to again, and again I tried to remember, and again it was like I was fainting. And at the end I couldn't remember a single thing he said. And I talked to a strange woman, a clairvoyant, and she said, that happened to me when my husband died. And I wanted to get out of bed to get a pencil to write down what he said. And I was found in a coma close to death in the morning on the floor. And I said, what do you think it was? And she said, well, people will laugh at me, but I think when you communicate with another plane, that it's like when you're deep sea diving, if you come up too quickly, you faint.
You get the bends.
Yes. Yep, I know.
It's your next adventure.
It's my next adventure for sure.
10,000 years from now.
Yeah, and what happens to the world when I've gone depends on us, George, and everybody out here. You're all part of what happens when I've gone.
Thank you, Jane. Jane Goodall, everyone.
Are we supposed to do Woonga?
Yeah. Do we have the video?
Yeah, we can. I'll introduce it.
We're going to bring out Bella. I think Bella wants to come out for this too. Bella, you want to come back? Do we have a video to play here? Okay.
Can I share your mic?
You've got a mic. Got your own.
I've got my own mic. Sorry, Jane. I thought you were the sharing type.
Can't have mine.
Okay, well, I'll share Mr. H instead. How's that? Well, Jane, you know, I think at 91 young, you show us that you just keep going. You keep showing up for the chimps. You keep showing up for the forests and young people. I don't know where you find your energy, but I think you've shown us that each of us has a role to play. And tonight we came here, one of our goals is to find 91 new supporters to join Team Goodall. We are more than halfway there, but with a little bit more push, I think we can get to our goal. And as Jane has reminded us, the time to act is now, and that every little bit matters. And taking action tonight can't be easier. You just have to go on to the digital action kit, hit join Team Goodall, because who wouldn't want to be on Team Goodall is my thing. And with that, and you also get in the next 48 hours the soundscape of Gombe, so you can transport the rainforest sound from Tanzania to your home, and can remember the magic of this evening. So I hope you can get on the digital kit and join our monthly supporters. Now, before we get to the exciting part about announcing the winner of the G Adventures Trip to Two for Borneo, thank you again, G Adventures, for these amazing Jane Goodall collection. Yes. I want to ask you, Jane, you, as George was saying, travel so much, 300 days a year. What advice do you have for folks who like to travel but want to do it in a better way or in a more sustainable way?
Well, first of all, to think every day about your own footprint. And I've got my own little way of having to be in hotels. Like I take my one little bar of soap and I leave their little bars nicely wrapped up for the next person. And little things like that. Take a brown paper carrier and don't use the plastic inside the bins in your bathroom. Little things like that. Like I won't have maids come in my room. I won't have my towels and sheets changed. But when you're looking at wildlife, which I think is what you're talking about, don't be like the people who say to the guide, well, I know that it's a rule that I can't get closer to the lion than that, but could you take me there? Well, there's $100 fine if I take you closer than that. Well, if you like to pay the $100 fine and pay $100 to me, of course I'll take you to see the lion closer. So don't be like that. Be respectful and don't spoil it for everybody else.
That's good advice. George, I'm going to ask you the same thing, because in your line of work, you're jet setting around as well. Like, what are your thoughts on how can we travel in a better way?
I think it's impossible to eliminate the harm you cause in this world, so I try to find all the ways to reduce it that I can, as Jane had said, whether it's finding ethical ways to offset, whether it's shopping in a much more local way, which is a big part. I definitely have to contend with the fact that I've been in the air a lot, and that's not great for the environment, but then I look around and I think I do what I can in other places, and I know that when I go to places, I try to make the most of the opportunity, and it's not frivolous. I don't travel really for fun. I go, you don't travel for fun. This is work, and we're trying to spread the good word. But again, it's reduce more than eliminate, and I'm very realistic about it. But I also don't get mad when people attack me for traveling a lot. They have every right to feel that way about it. And if I'm going to be in the air as much as I am, I have motorcycles. I understand that that's a problem. But one of the ways I did it was by changing how I ate. I looked at the carbon footprint and which diet had the smallest carbon footprint. I try not to tell people how to live their lives, but I looked at my life and went, oh, if I do that, I can make a significant impact on my footprint, so that's a choice I can make.
And also, Bella, you know, when people travel and meet other cultures, they do learn a lot, and they can be a lot more respectful, because when you just see the poverty that people live in, then travelers want to help, and they do help. They send in money, they let kids go to school, they help to build a school or a hospital. So, you know, it has its benefits too.
Absolutely.
And I think in both your cases, like you say, you're not traveling, you're traveling with a purpose. You know, George, either through your work with the World Food Program, or Jane, obviously, through the message that you share with all of us about the work of the Institute. It's traveling in a way that you need to do that to spread your message. You know, and we each, as I said, we have a role to play, and whether that be, you know, joining Team Goodall or like watching what we eat in a diet, there are so many ways that we can build a more sustainable planet, not just for today, but for tomorrow and for, you know, for future generations. So thank you for those insights, that we can keep living, but doing it in a better way.